Rates of drug abuse, rates of alcohol also concomitant go through the roof. So these are no boons, these are banes to the communities that they're sited in. And Oregon presenting as if these 14 prisons are a benefit to the community, when pulled, the whole thing falls apart really quite quickly. Another important example also is that Oregon prisons, because of Measure 17, supply their own labor. And you'd be pretty surprised at the labor that's performed by prisoners. They sort potatoes for Ore-Ida. At one of the larger prisons, they also do telemarketing. They work for Microsoft, they work for TWA, they work for Starbucks. They fold those little boxes together for Starbucks. There is a company in downtown Portland called Yoshida Company, which makes everything from teriyaki sauce to a line of clothes called Prison Blues. And Prison Blues, the catch quote is made on the inside to wear on the outside. And people love it. I mean, it's actually been, it's extremely distasteful, but it's an extremely profitable business. Now, if you look at this Yoshida/Array website, it's fairly insane looking, and I welcome you to look at it. Just Google it up, because the guy who owns it dresses like Elvis, and he has kind of everything. He's fairly proud, it's obvious, of capturing everything from dollars from teriyaki to prison clothes. Yeah.
How do you spell that?
It's YOSHIDA / and the secondary company is Array, ARRAY. At Snake River in Ontario, the prisoners also clean up the local Chamber of Commerce. They do janitorial work. At the Sacred Heart Hospital in Eugene, prisoners there underbid the local unionized company to use prisoners for its laundry. OSI in Powder River and Baker City are heavily invested in sheet metal fabrication and have been very much opposed by local sheet metal union shops and the AFL-CIO. All of this has been, the Measure 17 has been strongly opposed by pretty much most labor groups. And I mean, the reason is pretty obvious. If prisoners are taking jobs out of the local economies, that means you're not getting the double or triple wage that somebody who's unionized, who's skilled, who has education, who has experience would otherwise be making. You don't have to pay minimum wage unless your goods are going across federal lines. And then you actually, that becomes a different discussion. Then you do get minimum wage, and those are not as terrible in terms of the abuses. But you don't have worker protections, you don't have benefits, you don't have to worry about time off, obviously. You're not going to have to worry about attrition. Your workers are always going to be there and available. And you don't have to worry about any types really of labor protections except for like the most basic OSHA protections or safety protections. But even those are going to be really quite different to try and enforce from inside prison walls. So it's tremendously detrimental to the labor pools where these prisons are sited in these rural communities that are already economically devastated. Otherwise, they wouldn't be clamoring for a prison. So I'm going to try to kind of zip through talking just a little about privatization. People familiar with prison privatization, that phenomenon, started in the 80s. There's two major companies, and Dr. Saliba is going to be talking about the biggest growth industry within privatization right now, which is federal detention for immigrants. That is a huge moneymaker right now. It's absolutely the biggest skyrocketing part of the industry. But there's two major companies, and they are Wackenhut, now Geo. I think she's going to be talking about how some of Geo's interests, they're worldwide, and they include Guantanamo. And also CCA, Corrections Corporation of America, which began in Tennessee and is by far the world's largest privatized prison industry. Has about 70,000 purely privatized beds in the United States. There's around 30,000 more, so there's around 100,000 purely privatized beds in the United States. Again, when you staff these types of places, first of all, there's no oversight. They do not need to produce numbers for local governments to whom they're beholden for tax dollars or for grants or things of that nature. So you don't know what's happening behind these doors. They hire people at minimum wage. The vulnerable communities can include children. The juvenile detention facility industry is 60% privatized at this point. When you have children in facilities where there is no oversight, there are no watchdog groups, there's no need to let anybody in the doors, abuses absolutely happen. When you have, and this is the larger philosophical issue, you have people who are incarcerated for dollars, abuses happen. And anybody hear about the Pennsylvania judges kickback scandal within the last year? There are these Pennsylvania judges who were literally filling the local private children's detention center for like a $58 million contract. They were filling the beds with kids. And there were two judges who were at the head of this. One controlled the budget, the other controlled the courts. And 1 in 4 kids in front of the court judge's bench would go away. They would go into a cash for kid type of arrangement into the private facility. Kids were being incarcerated from 2003 to 2008 for things like putting up kind of derogatory Facebook pages against their vice principals. They were getting incarcerated for those types of things. That recently caused such a scandal that there was a recent, just actually this month, grand jury indictment against these two judges, and they're looking at racketeering, RICO charges, bribery, extortion, but significantly the companies they contracted with aren't looking at a thing, not any kind of penalty, not even a slap on the wrist. They're saying they were extorted by these two judges to do it. So there's just these incredibly vulnerable groups, children, people who are mentally ill. 20% of the people who are incarcerated are mentally ill. People in prison are generally poor. They do not have resources. They do not have people on the outside. They're often socially alienated from their loved ones and family. People who are medically needy. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Saliba to talk about immigration and immigrant groups who are an extremely needy population at this point who truly need oversight. Thank you.